It's 1997 in Phoenix, Arizona. A man hears a commotion from his neighbor's yard. He peers out his window. He sees a man standing over a woman's body. She's not moving. Then, as if in a trance, he walks to the garage and returns wearing work gloves. He drags the body over to the pool, pushes her in, and holds her head underwater. The neighbor, frozen in disbelief, finally snaps out of his shock and calls the police.
What is your emergency? I don't know. My neighbors, there was a bunch of yelling and screaming going on. I looked over the fence, and the husband just threw, I believe, the wife to the pool, and it looks like he's holding her underwater. All right, I'll get somebody out there. Thank you. Thank you.
When authorities arrive, they find a gruesome scene. In the backyard, Jarmila Falater lies dead in the pool, having suffered 44 stab wounds before being drowned. Inside the house, police found Scott Falater standing at the top of the stairs, looking dazed, wearing a crisp white t-shirt and red flannel pajamas. Falater asked police why they were in his house and what was going on. When police asked Falater how many people were in his house, he replied with 4, himself, his wife, and 2 kids. Falater was arrested on the scene. As investigators dug deeper, peculiar details emerged. The victim had been stabbed 44 times, yet when police arrived, Scott was wearing a crisp white t-shirt without a speck of blood. How could someone commit such a violent act and remain spotless? During the interrogation of Falater, police noticed a patch of blood behind Falater's neck. He claimed he had no idea he had blood on him, and asked police why they believed it was he who killed his wife. When police told him they had an eyewitness, he kept repeating that he did not understand. As the trial unfolds, the defense presents a surprising argument. Scott Falater was sleepwalking during the incident. This seemingly unusual claim forms the cornerstone of their case, and they bring in expert sleep specialists to support their theory.
Doctor, you indicated that one of the things that you looked at in reaching an opinion in this case that Scott was sleepwalking at the time he stabbed his wife was that much of it was illogical or nonsensical. You remember that?
Absolutely. It's one of the diagnostic criteria that it has to be a senseless act.
And then some of these acts that you see, for instance, the frenzied stabbing, is that almost nonsensical? Is that one of the things that's almost nonsensical about this, the number of all the wounds?
Yes, of course.
And would you describe to us some of the other things when you reviewed the evidence and the facts, which make no sense to you in terms of the charge in this case?
There was no logic to the behaviors really from start to finish as they were reported.
The defense paints a picture of a man with a history of sleepwalking, dating back to his childhood. They recount incidents where Scott would wander the house or become disoriented during these episodes, all without any recollection the next day. His sister testifies about a particularly unsettling event where Scott, while sleepwalking, appeared confused and agitated.
He was at the kitchen, turning the faucets on and messing around with everything around the sink. There were a lot of dirty dishes there and stuff. And he didn't answer me, and I just kind of stood there watching him. And then he moved toward the back door and turned the deadbolt lock so he couldn't get out.
Okay, go ahead.
And when I did that, I brushed against him, and he turned around and lifted me up and just tossed me through the air.
Expert witnesses for the defense argue that Scott was in a dissociative state at the time of the incident. They suggest that, stressed from work and sleep-deprived, Scott fell into a deep sleep and then rose in a sleepwalking state. In this condition, they claim, he might have tried to fix the pool pump, a task left unfinished earlier that evening. The defense theorizes that when Jarmila potentially interrupted him during this sleepwalking episode, Scott's instinctual brain perceived the situation incorrectly. This, they argue, led to the unfortunate events that followed. To bolster their case, the defense emphasizes Scott's apparent confusion upon police arrival and his consistent claims of having no memory of the event. They argue that his actions, including the misplacement of items, could have been carried out in this unconscious state, driven by deeply ingrained habits and muscle memory. As the defense rests its case on the sleepwalking theory, the prosecution drops a bombshell that threatens to shatter this narrative. During a thorough search of the Falater residence, investigators made a startling discovery that would become the centerpiece of their argument. In Scott's car, police found a Tupperware container, innocuous at first glance but holding damning evidence. Inside this container were Scott's blood-stained clothes from the night of the incident, along with the murder weapon, all neatly packed away. The prosecution argues that this meticulous concealment of evidence is completely at odds with the defense's sleepwalking theory. They bring in their own sleep expert, Dr. Mark Pressman, who testifies that while sleepwalkers might misplace items, they never hide things deliberately, especially not in such an organized manner. Furthermore, the prosecution points out the complexity of Scott's actions that night. They argue that the sequence of events, the initial confrontation, the hiding of evidence, and then the dragging of Yarmila's body to the pool, required a level of cognitive function inconsistent with sleepwalking. They also highlight the testimony of the neighbor who saw Scott put on gloves before moving Yarmila's body. This, they argue, shows premeditation and awareness. In the end, the defendant is found guilty of first-degree murder. Despite the defense's novel sleepwalking argument and the testimony of sleep experts, the jury ultimately finds the prosecution's evidence more compelling. Surprisingly, after the verdict, Michael Falater makes a public statement in support of his father, stating that he could not see his father killing his mother, as he was never a violent person.